for tuning in to another episode of African American Voices of Charles County, presented by the Charles County NAACP. I am your host, Joe Sampson Jr., and my guest today is the 10th president of the Charles County NAACP and current chairperson of the Charles County NAACP Youth Council, Ms. Wanda Wills Woodland. Ms. Wanda and I will chat about her personal history in the county, her history with the Charles County NAACP, her tenure as a president of the branch, and finally, her role and dedication to the Charles County Youth Council. Ms. Wanda, I will start by saying, first and foremost, thank you for agreeing to do this. I know I had to ask a few times, and I understand sometimes people are used to being on the stage, but not in front of the camera. So thank you for agreeing to partake in this interview.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to share as much information as I can. I do believe in history, and this is the best way that you can capture it. And I thank you and our current president, Dr. Sweat, for putting this wonderful, wonderful program together.
Wonderful. All right, so let's start from the very, very beginning. We're not talking like birthday beginning, but what we are going to talk about is your history with the county. Born, raised, how long you're, I'm learning that I'm a little further away from the city. So how long your people have been down here in Charles County?
My people have been down here in Charles County since that black gold traveled to Port Tobacco River.
Wow.
And my maiden name, one of my maiden names is Wills. And my family actually were slaves to Frank Wills' family. People know him as Southern Maryland, the Wills Group, all of that. My family is traced right back to their plantations. So I hate to say this, I think you guys owe me some money.
Right.
But when my family used to do all that free labor, I'm still waiting for it. I have to challenge that in court one day. But anyway, so we've always been, and that's at Spring Hill, Faulkner area, in which my family come from. My grandfather was one of 7 sons. His name was William H. Wills. They called him Blue Wills. My grandmother, Doris Mary Wills, and they raised us in La Plata. They actually moved to Washington Avenue in La Plata, Maryland. And that's where my roots start at. I was born and raised and was very blessed to live in a African-American community on Washington Avenue. It was a time when every adult was looking after you.
Yeah.
Everybody was connected, even if it wasn't by blood, we were connected because we helped each other out.
Yeah.
So when we talk about La Plata, Maryland, we are a very close-knit community in La Plata. And I'm the Washington Avenue. You had Oak Avenue. You had 225. And you had Kent Avenue. So all of those areas make up the La Plata, Maryland that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And I grew up and it was very segregated at the time. And I guess I was born in 1958. So I am actually one of the last group of children to experience segregation of Charles County, La Plata, Maryland. When I went to Sacred Heart, we sat in the balcony. When I went to the La Plata movie theater, we went in the balcony. When I went to school, I went to Port Tobacco Elementary School. It was coloreds, only coloreds. I went there the 1st and 2nd grade. So being so young, you don't think of it as being segregated. And I often think about it, it was just a way of life. On Washington Avenue, you had the white people that lived in the nicer houses up there near the courthouse on down. And then right now, right before you get to where the new La Plata firehouse is, that's where the black part went. That's the black community. And most of those communities, was always a black part and a white part. So that's where I grew up at a house right before the State Road Commission, which we used to call the State Shop. where, here I was no more than 7 years old, but my mother would yell,
Mhm.
Wanda, hurry up. Get to the state shop and buy me a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
7 years old, there I go, running to buy that pack of cigarettes
Yeah.
before they close. You know that will never happen today.
Nah, not at all.
That's
Not
never
at all.
happened
Right.
today.
Right.
Boy, did I get mad buying cigarettes for my mama. But
Yeah.
I'm here to say she stopped smoking probably about 30 years ago.
Hey, I can dig it.
But
So
back in the day. So that's where I grew up. And another thing is my name and was Wanda Tate.
okay.
My father came from Montrose, Virginia. So my roots are from Montrose, Virginia to Charles County. So a lot of people know me as Wanda Tate.
Wanda Tate.
And I was Wanda Tate up until I graduated from high school. And then you get your driver's license,
Mhm.
and then your parents got to look under the mattresses to give you your birth certificate. And it's like, wait a minute, my name is Wills. So
Oh wow.
I had to change my name to Wanda Wills in order to get my driver's license.
Wow.
So that was the short time I was Wanda Wills from time I was 18 until I, got married.
Mhm.
And that's when I switched my name to Wanda Wills Woodland into what people have known since I've been about 25 years old. But I still love it when somebody go, hey, Wanda Tate. I know
They
that's somebody.
They know you for
They
a
know,
long
they know
time.
me
They
real good. I'm
know.
like, okay, who is that? Wait a minute.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And I guess if I ever said if I wrote a book, I would have to do a historical book on From the Eyes of a Child.
Mhm.
And that's because I grew up in segregated, a time of segregation. My uncle, this is my first experience with the NAACP as well, was my uncle Francis D. Sales Wills,
Mhm.
who was the first president of the newly formed NAACP youth group under the leadership of Salome Howard.
Okay.
And
Wow. Okay.
yes, and during that time, I can remember when they actually did the sit-ins
Wow.
in La Plata.
Okay. All right.
Now,
So hold on, because we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. Let's stay where we are real quick though. You said something that I didn't know until this very moment. That Port Tobacco Elementary School at one point was a segregated elementary school.
colored school,
I did not know that.
Port
I'd never heard
Tobacco.
of that until this very moment.
Yes.
So you went there and you said first and second
I
grade.
went there the first and second grade because at that time, all Black people that lived within that radius went
Went
to
to
Port Tobacco Elementary.
Wow.
Now, I was taken out of Port Tobacco
Okay.
Elementary when I was in the third grade, and my mother signed me up to go to um, Walter J. Mitchell, which was the brand new fancy elementary school.
Okay.
And so she sent me there. My aunt and uncle, Janice and Clifford Wills, was already there.
Okay.
So my mother felt, okay, I'll send Wanda there. And the
Mhm.
reason why is because of the fact that the education, the books, everything was more advanced
Right.
than it was at Port Tobacco Elementary School. But I'm here to tell you, I had a hard time.
Wow.
At Port Tobacco, you had I hate to say this, I don't want to brag, but I was everything.
He was.
I mean, I was the
Hey, listen.
it
You
child.
might
I'm
as
here
well
to
stun
tell
on them
you.
while you're here. They
I,
don't.
I don't mean to brag, people, but I was the it child. I mean, I was loved.
Yeah.
I was, able to be chosen to do special assignments for
Yeah.
school. If there was a play, I would get a nice role. The teachers, they all knew you. They know your parents. And don't say I was bad. I got my hand smacked with the
Right.
ruler every other day because I ran my mouth too much.
Right.
But it was a sense of I felt loved, and at Port Tobacco Elementary School. My mother took me from that school and she put me into Walter J. Mitchell, and that was a very, very horrible experience for me.
Yeah.
I was very few blacks at that time. Out of probably about 20 some kids in that class, it was probably about 4, maybe 5 of us that were black.
And this is
No
a different
special,
time.
it's a different time.
Yeah.
No special attention, no extra help, never chosen to do anything. The work was so hard and nobody helped you
Yeah.
to do that work. You had to struggle. When I was at Port Tobacco Elementary School, I was a straight A student. But yet, when I was at Walter J. Mitchell, I was barely making it.
Yeah.
My mother could not understand how could I be an A student at Port Tobacco Elementary School and I'm barely making it at Walter J. Mitchell.
Right.
And she would help me with my homework. And she helped me so much until I got severely sick and I had to be taken to a doctor.
Oh, wow.
And the doctor said, "What has changed in Wanda's life?" Mama said, "Nothing has really changed." She says, "Oh, I took her from Port Tobacco School and she's now in the Walter J. Mitchell." She says, "How is she doing?" "Well, she's not doing very well. I mean, she used to make A's and B's, and no matter how hard I tried to get her, she's not keeping up the rest of the class."
Yeah.
And the doctor, Mr. Perigo told her, no, Mr. Miracle told her, Dr. Miracle, "Leave her alone. She has an ulcer. She has a full-blown ulcer."
You had an ulcer in
I
the
had an
third grade?
ulcer in the 3rd grade because I was being pushed to try to be that star student.
Wow.
And it just what he says, "You don't understand.
Yeah.
The work that she's doing in the white school
Yeah.
is more advanced than what she left in the colored school." It says it's not her fault
Yeah.
that she's not making the A's and B's. It's because she's given updated information that she's never had before.
Yeah.
She says, "My advice to you is leave her alone. She's smart, she's bright. Eventually, she will get it and move on." I did not make honor roll until I was in the 7th grade.
Wow.
But I made it. It
Yeah.
was hard.
You worked for it, right?
And my mother, I was on the same medicines, that big white medicines, no fried food, no sweet, just like an
All that
adult
stuff,
with an
right.
ulcer. And the ulcer healed. But that was a very serious and traumatic thing when you took a black child out of the school where you were nurtured, where people helped you,
Wrap their
and
arms
put you
around
in the
you.
school, no help.
Yeah.
They didn't no help at all. Now, the next year in 4th grade, that's when Charles County had to integrate the schools.
Okay.
So all my buddies from Port Tobacco, everybody came over in my 4th grade year. And again, I was if you were one of the bright kids,
Yeah.
you sort of made it along the way. If you had any type of issues or problems, eventually you just fell off to the wayside. We did not have any summer programs to prepare us for the lessons that we missed.
Right.
We had nothing.
There was no
They
transition.
put us in there and it was sink or swim. And when I graduated in 1976, I can count on this hand, and I probably have a few left, how many of my black male students graduated. By 9th, 10th grade, they were gone. They just could not handle it
now,
anymore.
this is so you went to Mitchell. After Mitchell, where'd you go for middle school?
From Mitchell, the middle school I went to was Walter J. Mitchell.
Oh, okay.
We went to Walter J. Mitchell.
And then you went to La Plata High School.
And then I went to La Plata High School.
Okay.
But again, during that era of the first people that went in, it was a sink or swim. Either you're going to catch on, you're going to move, or you're not.
Wow.
And it was very difficult for a lot of, I don't know why, especially the male students, to be able to graduate. So a lot of my classmates never graduated because they dropped out by the time they got to 10th grade.
Wow. All right, we're gonna pause right here. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I wanna get back to something you touched on about your uncle and the first encounter with the NAACP. And then we'll keep moving from there. All right.
Okay. All
So
right. Thank
we'll be
you.
right back.
All right.
Welcome back. So our first segment, we got to know a little bit about Miss Wanda, and my mind is still blown at an ulcer in the
Third
third
grade.
grade. But it's really interesting because again, and what I'm finding, and when we have these conversations about segregation, desegregation, what happened when people went from one side to the other, and for the reasons, to know that the physical weight of leaving a community-based education system and going to the white schools had a physical effect on you, and that's wild. So let's go back. Well, before we do that, I want to capture one thing, because if anyone has ever dealt with Miss Wanda in a youth council situation, you know that, with all due respect, Miss Wanda is a firecracker, and she is the cheerleader to all cheerleaders. We were briefly talking about it over the break, and you said some really interesting things, and I wanted to ask you about your cheerleading,
Ah,
and you were a long time La Plata cheerleader.
yes, I am a proud 4-year cheerleader from the Plata High School. Um, Loved it. Loved being the cheerleader. It was my calling. I was always athletic, so I did volleyball and I also ran track. But the highlight was being a cheerleader. Even that changed though.
Yeah.
When I first started in ninth grade, ninth and 10th grade, we had football cheerleaders and we had basketball cheerleaders.
Yeah.
So you all can guess where I'm going from here. The football cheerleaders was primarily white with a couple of black cheerleaders. The basketball cheerleaders, we were all black with a couple of white cheerleaders.
Right.
So we were happy. You know, I mean, they had their style of cheering, we had our style of cheering. And then in the 11th grade, once again, the curtain came down. One cheerleading team.
Yeah.
That meant you had to be willing to cheer for the football team as well as the basketball team. And believe me, it was only a couple of us blacks that stayed a cheerleader during that time.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I'm still a cheerleader to heart. I think it's something that once a cheerleader, always a
Always a
cheerleader,
cheerleader.
always a cheerleader. And I'm known by that to this
To
day.
this day.
To this day, people
Absolutely.
who know me as Wanda Tate know me Wanda Tate the cheerleader.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your history with the NAACP. You started telling a story earlier, and I wanted to save it as a wonderful transition over at this stage. Your first encounter and your earliest memory of the Charles County NAACP.
The earliest memory I have of the Charles County NAACP, I was probably six years old, about 6 years old. My uncle, Francis D. Sales Wills, was the first president, as I mentioned earlier. He was the first president of the newly formed NAACP youth group under, I always have to mention my wonderful Salome Howard, was their youth advisor. And back then, kids were seen and not heard. So all of a sudden, my uncle and my mother and my grandmother, they started having all this whispering at NAACP, and we're going to be sitting in, and my grandmother's having a fit saying, Sales, you're going to have to be careful. You're going to have to be careful out there. And my mother, she's all excited going, great. It's about, it's about time. So this was really some serious, scariest times back in those civil rights area, because the NAACP youth group went to every business in Charles County, and they sat at those lunch counters.
Wow.
Before, and this is in the, I guess, 63, they went to the march, so I guess this would be before, I would say 62, between that 62 and 64, when they would go from place to place. Now, the funniest thing is that Sales actually worked at 301 Restaurant with my mother, because he helped my grandmother with the, we went to school and also helped with the siblings. So he worked. And his boss, and when he worked, my grandmother would wash the dishes for him, because he couldn't lose his job.
Right.
So when Sales was out there doing the sit-ins, my grandmother's washing the dishes.
Wow.
And Mr. Posey would come in the back and going, I can't believe this. Sales have you here doing the dishes, and they're at so-and-so place doing the sit-in. They would come back again. They're at such and such place. Then one day, Mr. Posey said, I don't believe this. I don't believe this. Now here, Sales works for me, and him and that NAACP is in my restaurant. They have taken over my restaurant, and here his mother's doing his dishes.
So he actually, your uncle sat in at his own restaurant.
At the restaurant, the place, this is too much.
Did he keep it? Did he
Yeah,
keep his
because
job?
my grandmother, whenever he did
Wow.
the sit-ins, my grandmother washed his dishes. And Mr. Posey, I can't believe this. Here, Sales and those NAACP are in my restaurant.
I gotta say, man, that takes
He says, I don't believe this.
that takes some strength, man, to go and sit in back in and then show up for work on the day that they're not.
On the day they're not, he's showing up for work.
Wow.
On the day they did the sit-ins, that's why they knew my grandmother would work.
Absolutely.
Now, the biggest, one of the biggest feats that they did was the A&P store.
Yes, that's legendary.
They gathered. The plan was to get there early. All the youth, get all of the shopping carts, and put one item in it, even if it was bubble gum. You put that one item in that shopping cart, and nobody can put you out the store. So all day long, they had those shopping carts, and nobody was able to shop that day with the shopping carts. And the reason for that is because they did not hire any blacks. No blacks was being hired at the A&P store. So this was in protest to them not hiring blacks. And I'm here to tell you it was very successful, because right after that, George Mushert Sr. from Washington Avenue was hired to work for the A&P. And George, we call him baby brother, he worked there his whole career. He retired as a manager.
From that same A&P that he basically desegregated.
Yes.
Because your uncle,
my uncle, and all of the youth.
Now, this was just the youth council.
This was the youth council
who organized.
That's right.
And now they took up all of the shopping carts and just walked around the store from open to close.
And they said, boy, when the white people came in there, they were fussing all day. They couldn't get shopping carts.
They couldn't get the carts.
They couldn't get shopping carts to do the big shopping, because all of the youth were running around with one item.
Just walking around.
In there, just walking around in the store all day, just walking around in the store.
Wow.
So it ended up where it was very successful. And so I got to, every time they were talking about something, I got to listen in.
Yeah.
And so this was the way I was introduced to the NAACP. It was during the civil rights era.
Wow.
It was during an era where I knew that my uncle and all of the youth was making a difference and saying, no more colored entrances,
Yeah.
no more colored schools. This is equality. We pay our taxes, and we have the right to be treated as a full human, and what we pay taxes for, we have the right to be able to take full advantage of that.
You know,
Hmm.
I'm glad you said that, because what we find a lot is one of the driving factors in civil rights, even then the boycotts and stuff all around the country, a lot of the change that came from it wasn't so much the adults. It was the willingness and the hard work of the young people, the youth, the teenagers who did sit-ins, who picketed, who really a lot of times were the results of the fire hoses and all that. A lot of those were
They
children,
were
and
they
that
were
was
children.
and that's a lot what turned the civil rights movement.
Yes.
And again, the reason for this show,
Hmm.
the reason for these interviews are because transplants like myself who come from other places, we see how close Charles County is to Washington, D.C., but we don't really credit it for the small town that it is and what the people
Yeah.
here have done for at that time
Hmm.
to make it an option for people like myself to
Hmm.
move down here.
That's right.
So let me ask you
Now,
this.
I also want to, yes, it was the youth group, but like anything else, the adult group
Absolutely.
supported the youth because they had to have transportation
Right.
to get to these places,
Understand. Absolutely.
and they did that. And then when the Freedom Riders buses left Charles County to do those big Freedom Riders,
Yeah.
and it was the adult group that actually made sure that the youth was able to be there. So you always
Absolutely.
have the adult group, but it was during that time, it was the youth doing those mid 60s that was
Yeah.
in the forefront. They were the ones that went out there in the forefront.
So
Hmm.
so when did you decide to join the NAACP?
Oh, I took a while before I joined the
Okay.
NAACP. Um, the first organization that I joined was the Afro American Heritage Society.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
Mr. William Diggs,
Hmm.
was during that time. He was the one that was running it, and we also had a. So I was there with Mr. Diggs, and Mrs. Webb
Yeah.
was there.
We talked
So,
to Miss Webb about
yep,
that, and
Mrs.
Dorothea
Webb.
Smith. We
So
talked to
that
them
was
about it.
the first organization, and the only reason why I got in that organization is I was tricked by my grandmother.
Right.
Now, one thing about Mr. Diggs,
Hmm.
he had a lot of support
Yeah.
from all of the, ladies that would raise money and have those fish fries and things like that. So my grandmother got hooked and she started supporting Mr. Diggs' fundraisers.
Hmm.
And it was their fish fry, and she was in charge of a cake table. If you know my grandmother, she was at every walk, at every march, she's everywhere. But my grandma's very quiet,
Okay.
very strong,
Right.
quiet spirit. I'm strong, but I didn't get the quiet spirit.
Right.
So, so she go, Wanda, you got to help me. I'm in charge of a cake table. I don't know nothing about that.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, Grandma, I will help you with that cake table. 10 years later, I was still doing
The
cake
cake table,
tables and still
right?
doing it, but I loved it. So that was the first thing that I did. And I loved it because Mr. Diggs is really an unsung national hero.
Absolutely.
I mean, during that time, he had kids, school kids from Baltimore, DC, Virginia, everyone coming down to his little 2-room museum. And once I started there, Mr. Diggs did the first part, which had all the slavery and all
Hmm.
that good stuff. And while he was talking to that group, I had the group in the back where he had every wild stuffed animal, because he did that
Hmm.
as well, and all of the old equipment for cooking and
Hmm.
all that. So I would actually teach the kids I would start out with saying, "You guys know what soul food is? Ever heard soul food?"
Right.
And I would tell them, "Look around.
Look around.
Here's
Right.
soul food." And then I would show them how to use the coin grounders and how to do things. So I did that, and my love for history. And Mr. Diggs always, always would teach me something. For instance, I did not know the power of Mr. J.C. Parks, unsung hero
Mm-hmm.
of Charles County.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. J.C. Parks was you might as well say, the colored superintendent of schools.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But he was more than that. He was also a, a civil rights leader. Um, he was instrumental in having Physicians Memorial Hospital to admit Black people.
Oh, wow.
He was instrumental because they would not admit Black people at one
Mm-hmm.
point. And it was him and Mr. Diggs showed me all the paper. I couldn't believe it of what Mr. J.C. Parks did. So while he was doing equality for the teachers' pay, making sure that he did the best he could to have equal and the best schools that they could, he was also making sure that some of our um, top businesses like that hospital would not only admit but also employ. So that was really interesting. Um, so so much history. Mr. Diggs showed me one of the things he showed me at that museum that really knocked me out was slavery. Okay, I knew about slavery. And I knew that, you got passed on when somebody died, you got passed on. But then Mr. Diggs said, "Wanda, let me show you some documents." There he go. And he showed me wills.
Oh, wow.
He said, "Read these wills." And it was this where when he died, they split up the slaves. And then it was says, "Enslaved woman, marry, and all future births."
Wow.
How? And I'm going, you mean to tell me people are slaves before they even born?
Wow.
They're already slaves. They're already handed out. So, one thing about the African American Heritage Society, and I really need to really get back with that because my heart is always with history, is that it was a lot of wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
So from there, all of a sudden I met Mr. Reuben Collins and the Black Leadership Council for Excellence.
We talked to Mr. Collins.
Yes,
about
and the Black Leadership Council for Excellence. That they were putting on programs, Malcolm X Day.
Wow.
We were doing Marcus Garvey Day.
Wow.
We were just doing so much to educate our youth on our Black history.
Wow.
And we had programs where they actually would do they would write compositions. They would have art contests. We would do so much in partnership with the Board of Education and teaching our kids about some of this Black history.
Yeah.
So I sort of went away from, I left as a vice president with the Afro-American Heritage Society, but I had to turn away to the Black Leadership Council for Excellence because that's where my heart was. We gave out scholarships every year. And I was very instrumental in helping with those scholarships and all of the classes that we did. And then I was there again, probably for another upteen number of years. But then as I grew to be more involved in the community and what worked, I understood that nobody had the power except for the NAACP. And things that I felt that we could do, I felt that we could do it better, stronger, influence more people if it was done within the NAACP.
Wow.
So therefore, I left the Black Leadership Council for Excellence and I moved over to the NAACP. And I started out with NAACP as Swanese Hawkins. She was the president, as her secretary.
Wow.
And I stayed her secretary for many years. And eventually, when she finally stepped down, then because the Vice President William Braxton wasn't ready to go for president, I end up becoming president.
All right, hold on. All
I'm
right,
putting you out there, William Braxton.
so we're gonna learn more about that in a
I'm
second. So
putting you
right
out
now,
there.
let's take a quick break, and then we'll go back. We'll come back and talk more about your presidency at
Okay.
the branch. We'll be right back.
We're the NAACP. We don't follow movements, we define movements.
Welcome back. And our last side note, I want you all to notice Miss Wanda over here. so, so Wanda's always so well prepared. Not only she came, and I'm gonna cheat. She came with notes, things that she wanted to make sure she touched on because there's so much. This um, this is a clear representation of, like I said earlier, why this show exists. Because there's so much trapped up in the brains of these individuals who've done so much for this county for so long. So we got a wonderful history lesson last segment in terms of some of the civil rights giants in Charles County, J.C. Park. So we have two of them who elementary schools are named after. Swanice Hawkins, who at some point I would love to get her on the show, and we're trying to schedule a date with her. Your uncle, the A&P sit-ins, things like that happen, and then your transition through the African American Heritage Society and other organizations, and ending up with the NAACP. So let's talk about your time with the NAACP. You were in it. And at some point, you decided to run for president. Obviously, you said it was supposed to go to Mr. Braxton, who we'll chat with in a little while. Mr. Braxton's already tabbed
Put
to
you on
air on the
blast,
show.
Mr. Braxton.
But he didn't take it. You got it. Tell me, set the stage for me. As briefly as you can, set the stage of what you assumed presidency of the Charles County NAACP in 1998.
Yes.
Your time was between 98 and 2002. So for 4 years. Talk to me, because that's not that long ago. Oddly enough, I just got to the area in 96, but I was on the Virginia side. But so I was around here at that time, and in 98, 2000, I remember a lot of people moving down here because they had just started building down here. I was working on Bowling Air Force Base, so there were a lot of people coming down 210 to live in this area. So set the stage for me what the climate was like for the NAACP in 1998.
It was a very interesting climate. It was a climate where the NAACP had managed to have a lot of success in working with our leadership and working with the sheriff department. And I think that they were very comfortable with the relationships that they had because they had open door relationships. They were able to talk and get things done according to what they thought those priorities and things were. So during that time, we had come to a point to where I feel that a lot of people thought we were in a good place, and they were very, I would say, even very comfortable Our commissioners were very comfortable with NAACP. Our NAACP leadership was very comfortable with our commissioners, and rightfully so, because they have done a lot of good things together, and what they were working on. During the time when I accepted as president, um, it was very unexpected to me because I'm a single mom working as a high-tech recruiter for a top corporation, and I'm putting in many hours doing the recruiting and filling positions, and then I'm with NAACP too. But because Swanese Hawkins had worked so closely with me, and she had trained me in the management and what's important, and NAACP, all of that came under Swanese until when the time came, and when Mr. Braxton was not able, for his reasons, not to do it, I felt obligated to say, okay, I will do it. So it wasn't so much of me being elected as so much of, okay, all of us that are working, who would accept this role?
Right.
And I did accept the role. Nobody ran against me as the president NAACP. Oh, but unfortunately, when I came in, I did see things that I thought needed to be addressed that have always bothered me. And as the president, then it's your responsibility to do your research, to do your to look. And one of the first things that I did was challenge the way that we have our voting set up.
Yes.
In 1998, we still didn't have any Black county commissioners. I mean, Charles County what was it? It's been over 200 years, and we still didn't have any Blacks. And why? I felt it was because of our at-large voting. Even if you had a Black run in a certain area, and they were totally supported by that area, because of at-large voting, they would never win. The demographics during that time was, easily, and please don't anybody quote me on this, but we were probably close to 60% white, 40 Black, or give or take either way on that.
Okay.
So unless you were an extremely, extremely popular African American, there's no way you're going to win. Not in the way Charles County was set up and allowed the mentality. So what I did was, and that was with the agreement, and also a person who had just became a lawyer, Reuben Collins. He was our legal counsel during the time. We said what we need to do is let's talk to U.S. Justice Department about this. So we met with the Justice Department. We talked about the fact that no one had, Blacks had been elected. It's 1998. And we think it's because of, we feel that the at-large voting is discriminatory to Black people. And we'll never get in office the way we're going. Just so happens they were already looking at Charles County.
Wow.
They said, well, we're glad you come to me because Charles County has been on our watch list because of that. So they came in, started investigating, and they called Commissioner President Levy. And Mr. Levy did not know that I had been talking to the Justice Department about the at-large voting.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that was the first time I rocked the boat.
And the boat never got still since.
First time I rocked the boat.
Yeah.
People, again, who have been in leadership roles and African Americans, they wasn't too pleased that Commissioner Levy was upset because I did not talk to him first before going to the Justice Department. So I went in and I met with Levy, and the first thing he did was the usual, how Wanda, hello.
Mhm.
It's about, well, I did receive a call from the Justice Department that you have started an investigation on our at-large voting. I said, yes, sir. He says, well, why didn't you just come and talk to me about it first? Why couldn't we talk? I said, because this has been an issue for a long time.
Hundreds of years.
And
Right.
you know that it exists, and everyone do. And I didn't think that I needed to talk to you about an issue that was very critical to the African American community. What I needed to do is find out what can we do about it.
Yeah.
I said there was no disrespect to you. I says, but this is discriminatory, and I wanted to know what can we do, and is this right? So he went and he said, well, after that, it was the smile, the handshake. And I says, and it's no disrespect to you. It's just that I think we need to start working to solve these problems
Right.
instead of talking. You have talked with the NAACP for a long time. It's time for the NAACP to start taking some serious action and see what we can do.
That's pretty interesting that you mentioned that. We taped an episode with now current Commissioner President, funny enough, current Commissioner President and the first Black Commissioner President, Reuben Collins. And one of the things that he was most proud of, he talked about, was working on the voting here in Charles County. And I think it's important to timestamp that because it's 2020 at this stage, and 98 to 2002 is not that long ago.
It's not that long ago.
It's not that long ago for the type of issues that we're discussing. So let me ask this question, because clearly that was a monumental thing, and the way we vote in this county today is a clear representation of the work the NAACP, its legal counsel at the time, and the individuals who sought to correct that, to make it a fair and equitable process, which now leads to having a number of African Americans in voted positions in this county based on something that critical. So let me ask, in terms of organization and as a president, what were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you either work with other individuals or because clearly the time frame that you were engaged in this county, you have been able to, I won't say benefit because that is discrediting what you have accomplished. You were a part of some monumental shifts in this county.
Yeah. Again, and I was a lot younger back in 1998, and coming with newer ideas, just like the young people are coming today.
Absolutely.
I have to sit back and go, that was you at one time.
Right.
I will tell you, even NAACP members were shaky at what I did.
Right.
They were very uncomfortable because, they had already developed these great relationships. And I come in there as the president and just start going, I done made President Commissioner Levy upset.
Right.
And it caused them to be leery of me.
Okay.
And I just had to keep my calm and say, this is good for us. I says, hang in there with me. And you will see that this is for the best. I said, this is something that we have to do. I said, besides, the Justice Department have it now.
Yeah.
The Justice Department will come back and tell us if we have to stop at-large voting because it's discriminatory, it's against the Voting Rights Act, or is it okay? It's nothing wrong with us doing this. We need to start going outside of Charles County and using and not only that, but I also work very closely with the with our Maryland State Conference.
Okay.
Anything I did, the Maryland State Conference have to know.
Absolutely.
So they knew that I was going to challenge that voting rights,
Right.
at large voting, and they gave me the support. They helped with everything that I did. That we did it together. It was we did it together, and what happened? Forgive the stumbling,
No,
trying to talk and remember.
no, no.
Long story short, what the investigation said was they want to see, was it was ready to go into, it was 1 year from another election year. We want to see what happens at that next election before they rule. But some wonderful things happened before that next election. One of our county commissioners had to, I don't remember why, step down, and the Democratic Central Committee voted Edith Patterson as the replacement county commissioner.
Wow.
So she became our first Black county commissioner.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay.
Nice.
Now the key was the election year coming up. And during that election year, Edith won the votes, and so did Reuben Collins. So therefore, the case that we had with the Justice Department did go away.
Yeah.
But it did wake people up to let them know that, and it was a couple of other issues that we worked on that we were concerned about. But it let the county commissioners know to not take the NAACP for granted.
Absolutely.
We have the intelligence, we have the resources to investigate and present our cases to you.
Absolutely.
We did not have to come to you
Yeah. Right.
to
right.
get your permission
to do
or to help us with anything.
which would go
We are
against what we need.
independent of that.
Right.
And it meant that we work together and we respect that friendship. But with NAACP, we're not friends. We cannot be your friend.
Yeah.
We have respect, but there's sometimes when we have to go against the popular decision.
Absolutely.
And that is what happened in several cases when I became president. Another person I shook up was the Sheriff Davis. And I shook up Sheriff Davis because we submitted our first Citizens Review Board.
Okay.
They did not give it a chance at all. Written very well. They can still stand up today, that Citizens Review Board. And again, a lot of hard work came in there. Reuben was still the lawyer. We looked at other review boards all around United States. The ones that hit the most that followed was Prince George's County and yet another state. But we thought we put a pretty solid, a review board together. But they felt as if it wasn't necessary. After a lot of, and again, Fred Davis was very liked by the community.
Yeah.
And he used his powers of his popularity of the Black community to actually try to attack me and what I wanted to do. And it didn't work. And once again, it was the point of making sure that everybody understand what the NAACP is, not Wanda, what is the NAACP is trying to do and why this is something that we need. Yeah. Now, out of that, as you know, we're still working, and I do believe we're going to bring that up again, the Citizen Review Board. They changed the way they changed the whole complaint system
Oh, wow.
to make it a little bit more friendlier.
Right.
Because part of the problem is nobody would even make complaints because they were treated so bad or they was given wrong information. So the whole system, we worked together and we changed the complaint process where you could do them online. They were posted in all of the public buildings, how to file a complaint with the police department.
Wow.
Everywhere you went. And then eventually was on where you could do it online. But that was the best that we could do, which was still pretty big because we redid that, and we did that collectively with the sheriff department and the NAACP. So probably why I'm gray now. That was a biggie, and it's something that very proud of the NAACP group for hanging in there and understanding what was really happening. And please, when the NAACP go after something, we're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it for equality. We're doing it for our citizens. We're doing it for equality.
Absolutely.
It's nothing personal. And I think when everybody realized that, I have even more support. And another big issue that we had, and I'm gonna look at my notes to make sure, during this time, it's come up again, but the first time, the home rule versus the executive form of government, that came up while I was president. No one even heard about it or really talked about it. It was a big issue. So as the NAACP, what I did was have workshops open to everybody, not just NAACP members, but we held 2 or 3 workshops so that we had people come in to explain what is home rule, what is the executive, what does it mean.
Can you briefly tell me what's the home rule and the?
Well, it's basically the way we're run now is home rule. The executive part is like Prince George's County.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Okay. I get
Prince
what you're saying.
George's is an
Gotcha.
executive body.
Gotcha.
And some people felt we should go that way. And then some wanted to keep it, the way that we had it under the home rule. So we gave some really good workshops. They were, well attended. We had good speakers on both sides. And I think during that time, the NAACP people got to say, yeah, this NAACP is okay. We're not saying we want this, we want that, but we're helping you to understand, because understand what it is.
Right.
So that was something that I'm very, very proud of, is the way that, and I think that's when we really, one of the first times that we ever really started having public work. I call that a workshop. Public workshops is when we had those workshops on that. That was very successful. And as you know it, we still home rule.
Right, today.
And it came up again, I think, a few years ago.
So we have to start wrapping up here real quick. So I wanna touch on one last subject. I know we can't get to everything, and there's a lot, but currently your role as the, because obviously your tenure ended in 2012. There was some time away from the branch, and you've been back. I've been here a few years, and you were here obviously long before me, back as a member of the branch. But your baby, pun intended, is the Charles County NAACP Youth Council. And I know we're wrapping up, so.
Yeah, I'll make this brief. Our NAACP youth group is a very important, because what we're doing, again, is raising our leaders. We're teaching the youth how to handle a situation, how to properly handle that situation. The kids, if they have an issue in the schools, what we do is we'll go to the Board of Education, and they have to follow these steps. First, what is the problem? Explain why you feel it's a problem. And what's most important is, how do you think that problem can be fixed? Because I teach the kids, don't complain if you don't have a solution. You have to have a solution, or you can't present. Right. So we're teaching the kids really how to present themselves. They have gone in front of the county commissioners several times, on the Board of Education, the sheriff department, and everybody's been very pleased because when they do this, these are their issues and they will come up with how they feel it can be solved. And that's training new leadership.
Yeah.
And it's also training kids on, okay, there is a way to fix a problem. I don't have to just sit here and complain and whatever. Let's do something about it.
Do something about it.
Let's just do something about it. We don't. Let's take it to the street. Take it to where it goes.
Absolutely.
Because you have the power to do that. You want to empower the youth while they're youth, so that they grow up, and they will continue to be experts in dealing with all sorts of problems as they come by. And that's basically what the youth group is doing.
Nice, nice. So, as we bring this conversation to a close, I want to thank Miss Wanda for her willingness to share both her personal story and her journey with myself and you, the viewers. I want to thank Justin, Amber, and Mike for all of their hard work behind the scenes. And a very special congratulation goes out to Justin, who just graduated this past week from the College of Southern Maryland. And so we're proud of him, and we look forward to all the exciting stuff of his future. That's Justin in the background. We appreciate you, big guy. As always, thank you, the viewer, for watching. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. And I'll see you the next time on the African American Voices of Charles County. However, normally we end right here, but I would like to end in a special way. Miss Wanda, when she ends her youth council meetings, the cheerleader in her has a wonderful NAACP chant.
Oh my goodness.
I normally don't but I will be your crowd afterwards. So if you don't mind, Miss Wanda, can you give us your NAACP chant?
Now this is the chant that all NAACP members go by, and it goes, "Give me an N, I got you in, I got you in, give me an N, I got you in, I got you in, give me an A, I got you A, I got you A, give me an A, I got you A, I got you A, give me a C, I got you C, I got you C, give me a P, I got your P, I got your P, NAACP, woo, woo, you gotta fight if you wanna be free, woo, woo, you gotta give it all you got, woo, woo, you got to show them what it's all about, woo, woo.
Thank you, Miss Wanda. We appreciate it. You weren't getting off without getting me that. There was no doubt about that. Thank you again.
All right.